Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., and this is episode 29 of the Undrafted podcast. Man, this is almost another milestone, man. This podcast has been going on for, I think we started it in March. And man, it's been a blessing. Like, I love it. I love doing this podcast, man. Coming up on this episode today, the Denver Broncos, man, I don't know why they insist on treating me like this, but they dropped another one to the Chiefs for the sweep again in 2018. They dropped one to the Chiefs on Sunday. We'll talk about that a little bit. Blake Bortles and the Jags. Blake Bortles and the Jags, they're just straight up tripping. And, Jalen Ramsey did all that trash talk before the season. And, Blake Bortles is not helping Jalen Ramsey's case as far as that GQ interview goes. Kobe says LeBron is part of the Laker family. Of course, why would he not be? But you'd be surprised at what some people are saying. The Broncos, they traded my dog Demaryius Thomas this past Tuesday. Talk about Chad Kelly being cut in that bizarre situation with him winding up in somebody's house randomly and uninvited. Then I got a new recipe for you in Tabletop Chronicles with Chef Road Daddy. So you'll want to hear about that one. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with the Low with Road. The Broncos lost to those demonic Kansas City Chiefs again on Sunday, 30-23, as the Chiefs got the sweep for the third year in a row. I am sick and doggone tired, and I was really hoping Denver would be able to at least split the series as far as 2018 goes with this annoying team, but, it is what it is, whatever. The Chiefs have won the last 7 meetings between these two squads, dating all the way back to 2015. Now, the funny thing is the Broncos won the previous 7 meetings between these two squads from 2012 to 2015. Even though the Broncos lost on Sunday, they actually managed to hold the Chiefs to 2 of their lowest score totals in both games. Now, the Broncos played tough, and they had plenty of opportunities to win the game on Sunday, but once again, they shot themselves in the foot with penalties. The Broncos are simply an undisciplined football team, and that's been a recurring theme under head coach Vance Joseph and this staff. The Broncos were penalized 10 times for 83 yards on Sunday, and their road record under Vance Joseph has dropped to 2-10 in his time in the Mile High City. Now, I'll be straight up honest with you. I have given up on the 2018 season because I simply have given up on this coaching staff. I am over this coaching staff. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am 100% over this coaching staff because, the Broncos have a decent roster. They've got good players, but for whatever reason, this coaching staff cannot seem to put these good players in good situations consistently. Yes, I know the players have to play and execute. I completely get that. But these schemes and these game plans leave much to be desired. There's too many penalties, there's too many boneheaded mistakes, and so on and so forth. And there's a streak that the Broncos have, and they're in danger of repeating it, and it is not a good one. Denver hasn't had back-to-back losing seasons since 1972. And here's where I'm at with this season. I hope that they can at least get to 8-8 so they can keep that streak going. At the end of the day, we have this streak going for us. Can we at least get to 500 on the season? Can we at least keep this streak? Because I don't have the faith in this coaching staff for Denver to go on a 7 or 8 game wild tear. Denver's 3-5 right now. Technically, they could still get into the playoffs, but I don't see Denver going on a 7 or 8 game winning streak and getting to 10-6, 11-5. I had high hopes coming into this season. You heard all the hype coming out about the Broncos in training camp and how good the quarterback situation looked and this and that and the other. And, there was a lot of hype about this team coming out of the season. And, so far, man, with this coaching staff, I don't see Denver finishing any better than 8-8, and I'm hoping they can get to 8-8. But we'll see what happens on Sunday. Now, the one good thing that the Broncos have going for them is the running game. The running game is the strength of the offense, but even then, for some reason, they don't want to run the ball consistently. They found a diamond in the rough in Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay is a beast. Like, I've said that consistently on this podcast. Like, I love Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay can flat out play. I love the way he plays. This dude plays with so much heart, it's insane. Now, he had 18 carries for 95 yards on Sunday. And as far as Royce Freeman goes, he was out. He was still fighting that ankle injury. The Broncos offense definitely missed him in the game. Now, he and Lindsay together, they're a top 5 running back duo in the National Football League. And that's not just me saying that. The facts say that. If Royce Freeman was in the lineup on Sunday, the outcome might have been different, but, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Coming into Sunday's game, the Broncos had the second highest yards per carry average in the running game in the National Football League, but they run it 17th most. Go figure. Now, as far as the quarterback spot in Denver, that's still an area of concern because even though they signed Case Keenum to a 2-year deal in the offseason at $25 million guaranteed in cash money, Case Keenum has not put out production that shows he's worth that kind of contract. He just hasn't. And I like Case Keenum. I think he's a great dude. I really think he's out there trying hard. You can tell he's got some fire to him. He wants to do a great job. But so far, the only good thing I can say about Case Keenum is he's better than the quarterback play that we had last season. That's about it because he's even struggled this season. Now, Case Keenum is the only quarterback in the NFL to throw a pick in every single game this season. He's got 10 touchdowns and 10 interceptions for the year. He still tends to hold on to the ball too long, and he's taken unnecessary sacks when he doesn't have to. Now, some of that Case Keenum can fix, but also part of Case Keenum's struggles are on the offensive line because that offensive line has not been the same since Ron Larry went out with his injury a few weeks ago. So they've got some struggles. Kansas City sacked Keenum 5 times on Sunday, and that wasn't even counting the times that they were, getting into the backfield, hurrying him, hitting him after he released the ball. And, that will harass any quarterback. So part of the struggles are on the offensive line that's having some issues. Then on top of that, we go back to the coaching staff because Case Keenum has shown to be a better play-action quarterback, and Bill Musgrave, the Broncos offensive coordinator, for whatever reason, refuses to do more play-action type of stuff with the offense. It seems like the Broncos offensive staff, they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and I don't know. It's like they want him to fit into a system. And it's like, why can't y'all look and see what he was successful at in Minnesota last year and kind of incorporate more of that into the offense? Case Keenum showed he's capable of winning games last year. I mean, he showed that he's a decent quarterback. He can be kind of like a Jake Plummer type quarterback like he was for the Broncos back in the early 2000s. But he's also got to have the right coaching staff. Now, maybe once this coaching staff is cleaned out at the end of the season, because I personally do not see Vance Joseph and this staff lasting past 2018. Maybe once the Broncos move on and they get a more offensive-minded coach, or maybe they get a coach that's more innovative and can really kind of look and see Keenum's game and see what they can do, things that they can add in to really help him improve. Maybe under another coaching staff that has better vision for stuff like that, they can come in and he can improve. Because Case Keenum, he'll more than likely be in Denver in 2019. I don't see the Broncos moving on from him even after this season is over. And another problem that the Broncos have as far as the offense goes, they lost their best tight end when Jake Butt tore his ACL a few weeks ago. And his replacement, Jeff Hireman, he hasn't shown to be a tight end that puts fear in opposing defenses since his time in Denver. So, they've got that issue going on. Then as far as going back to the quarterback spot, a few weeks ago, some fans were clamoring for Chad Kelly to get a look, but that's out of the window because the Broncos got rid of him after he randomly walked into those people's house. I'll talk about that a little bit later. The Broncos did what they should have done. They got rid of him. There's a quarterback that could possibly come in and help the Broncos, and they were actually looking at getting him a few years ago. We know that John Elway is way too prideful to call another former number 7, Colin Kaepernick, and give him a shot. So Denver's forced to stick with Keenum another year because there's no can't-miss quarterback in next year's draft class. There's homeboy up in Oregon, but there's a really good chance that he stays in school for his senior year. 2020 is about the next time that there's going to be just, multiple can't-miss quarterbacks coming out of the draft. This draft, you had Baker Mayfield, you had Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Denver didn't pull the trigger on any of those dudes. And the trade deadline is over, sir. There's no trading for a guy like Jacoby Brissett out of Indy or Teddy Bridgewater. And there's no guarantee that those dudes would have even been made available for trade. Now, when it comes to the quarterback position, honestly, this position has been historically a thorn in the Broncos' side. Because when you look at the quarterbacks Denver has drafted through the years, they've never had a franchise quarterback that they drafted and it just truly worked out. Now, of course, there was John Elway, but he wasn't drafted by the Broncos. He was drafted, of course, by the Colts, who were still in Baltimore at the time, back in 1983, and then they pulled off that big trade. Then the closest thing you could say as far as a franchise quarterback since John Elway was Peyton Manning. But, of course, he wasn't drafted by the Broncos either. And the funny thing is, I was on Twitter the other day. Somebody asked a question similar to this about franchise quarterbacks and the Broncos and this and that and the other. And there were a few people on there somebody asked, who's the best quarterback that the Broncos have ever drafted? And there was a few people on there who said Peyton Manning. Now I'm thinking they're bull jiving. They just joking, this and that and the other. They were dead on serious. So I was like, I could not believe what my eyes were seeing. Yeah. How you even fix your mouth to say that without joking, I don't get it. Both of these cats were Colts who turned into Broncos. So Peyton Manning comes over in 2012 when Indy cut him after the whole neck thing. Now, Tim Tebow was drafted by Denver, but we saw how that worked out. Jay Cutler, he was drafted back in 2006. He had a decent career. He only lasted in Denver, 3 seasons before the whole Josh McDaniels fiasco. But Jay Cutler, he was constantly dogged because he had a nonchalant attitude and just gave off the vibe that he did not care. Now, when it comes to the Broncos currently, in 2017, the Broncos didn't want to make the jump in the draft to get Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. Both of these cats went 10th and 12th in that draft, while the Broncos, they stood their ground and they drafted Garrett Bowles at the left tackle spot. And all he's done since he's been in the league is lead the league in holding penalties. Go back to 2016. They let Philadelphia grab Carson Wentz and Dallas grab Dak Prescott in the 4th round, while Denver traded up in the 1st round to grab Paxton Lynch, who is so bad, he's not even in the league anymore. And this is the thing with the Broncos. This is the thing that's been kind of frustrating the last few years as far as the quarterback position, because you see Houston, they saw Deshaun Watson, they saw what he did at Clemson. Houston moved heaven and earth to move up in the draft to draft Deshaun Watson. Philly, they saw what Carson Wentz was up in North Dakota. And I remember Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie, they did an interview with him a while back. They asked him, what was it that drove them to Carson Wentz? They said they did their research on Carson Wentz and a few other cats that were coming out of the draft that year. They put together like a 70 or 80 page profile about his personality, his football mechanics, his football IQ, all these different things. They did interviews with him, talked to him, see what he was like as a person, to find out where he was coming from, his life story. They did like a whole in-depth analysis of each of these quarterbacks that they were looking at. They zeroed in on Carson Wentz. They moved heaven and earth to trade up in the draft to get him, and then they went after him. And you see what Carson Wentz was doing before he tore his ACL. He's still getting back into form this year, but they saw their guy, they went after him. Houston saw their guy, they went after him. And it seems like the Broncos wanted to just hold pat and try to find a diamond in the rough later in the draft. And trust me, I get it, but I understand the thinking behind it, but it's not working. Denver has got to stop bull jiving, and they got to find a long-term solution at quarterback. And that's just the last 2 years. I could take it back to 2012 when they missed on Russell Wilson in that draft, and they picked Brock Osweiler, and we see how that worked out. That dude is – I'm going to move on. Case Keenum is a decent fill-in guy, but the thing is, they're not even playing to Case Keenum's strength. That's the frustrating thing with this team. So when it comes down to the 2018 season, I'm over it. Like, I've truly given up on it. Now, I'll still watch the games and stuff like that because I'll support my squad, but I've given up on the season. But then not because of the players, because we have a decent roster. We got some great talent on both sides of the ball. It's the coaches that don't seem to know how to use it. The Denver Broncos have 11-5 talent on the roster with a 5-11 coaching staff. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I am 100% over this current coaching staff of the Denver Broncos. Moving on with the low with Rove. Remember that article where Jalen Ramsey called half of the quarterbacks in the NFL trash? Well, he apparently forgot to include his own quarterback, Blake Bortles, in that discussion, because Blake Bortles has been bad this season. Let's just be honest. Let's just call it what it is. Blake Bortles has struggled. Now, I'm pretty sure all of those dudes that Jalen Ramsey called out in that interview, I'm pretty sure they're just as good, if not better, than B squared. Now, he talked all that trash, and now look at the Jags. This is why your mouth should not write checks that your quarterback will have to cash. And that Jags defense, not exactly what it used to be. Now, he talked all that trash in that interview, and his own quarterback has him looking like a doggone fool. Now, Dak Prescott was one of the quarterbacks Jalen talked about in that interview. He said Dak was all right, but the offense runs around Zeke. Now, he wasn't lying about the offense running around Zeke. We all know that the Dallas offense is predicated behind Zeke Elliott. Now, in that game where the Cowboys played the Jags, Dak posted a 107.5 passer rating, rushed for 82 yards, and a touchdown against the Jags as the Cowboys went on to smash them 40-7. Zeke, he went over 100 yards rushing on the day. Now, coming into that game, the Jaguars defense was the number 1 or number 2 defense in the league, but since then, they've tumbled. They've surrendered more points than they've scored. They gave up 30 against the Chiefs. They gave up 40 to the Cowboys, 20 to the Texans, and 24 to the Eagles this past Sunday. For the whole month of October, the Jags scored 46 points. 46 points in the whole month of October. And the last 18 points came on Sunday against the Eagles, because before that, they were 30-14 against the Chiefs, 40-7 against the Cowboys, 20-7 against the Texans. Blake Bortles is sinking the Jaguars ship. There's just no other way to put it. He was benched in the Texans game for Cody Kessler, who was once a quarterback for the Browns. And guess what Cody Kessler did while he was the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns? He went 0-8. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. See, this is the same Blake Bortles who led Jacksonville to the AFC Championship game against New England and was actually beating them for a good part of the game. They had New England down going into the fourth quarter. Then, come the offseason, the Jags give him that big $54 million extension, which I thought was a bad idea from the jump, because Blake Bortles, he showed to be decent, but he's not like that. He's not that guy. Blake Bortles, to me, is kind of like Mark Sanchez, where he'll play good enough in stretches to kind of fool you into thinking that you can build something around him, and then he just wets the bed when you least expect it, and he doesn't pull out of that slump. So for that reason, I was against them giving him this extension, even though I understood it with the timing of everything, because he was decent last year. Then on top of that, there's just a drought of decent to good to great quarterbacks in the NFL. Blake Bortles was decent last year, so from that aspect, I did understand it. As 2017 went along, it looked like B squared was actually starting to figure out this whole NFL thing. He was 315 out of 523 passing last year, 3,687 yards, 21 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Now, those aren't exactly world beater stats, but they're pretty decent. And as far as 2018, he's 175 for 290, a little over 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And honestly, those stats sound better than he's looked at times this season. Now, he's had games where he looked like he was building off of last season, like against the Patriots back in week 2. He went down and he beat up on Tom Brady and the Patriots. Now we're hearing stories of the Jacksonville players having to be held back from fighting each other in the locker room and all kinds of craziness. Now, when you hear stuff like that, it looks like the Jaguars are crumbling from within. And I remember that takes me back to 2016 when that happened with the Broncos. They were coming off the Super Bowl win. Offense was struggling that year. Defense was still playing at a high level. You heard stories of cats fighting in the locker room. It was the classic offense versus defense division. When you get that kind of divide in the locker room, it's not good because nobody wins at that point. Now, even though they still have a championship caliber defense in Jacksonville, I don't care how good your defense is. If the offense can't consistently stay on the field and put up points, that defense is going to crack because no defense is good enough to withstand that kind of pressure constantly. The Jaguars are in trouble. They're in serious trouble because they don't have a quarterback. And in today's NFL, you have got to have a quarterback to even have a shot. B squared is struggling. Cody Kessler isn't that good. There's no gotta have him type of quarterback coming in the draft next year. Now, what they could do, they could sign an outside guy who's smart and could at least play decent for the rest of the year, but I highly doubt that happens. They could, well, the trade deadline is over, so they can't try to trade for anybody. Now, what they could do is next year, if they're not comfortable with any of the quarterbacks coming out of the draft, they could look at Tyrod Taylor. He's been benched for Baker Mayfield, and Tyrod Taylor's a decent quarterback, but he ain't getting that job back in Cleveland. Jacoby Brissett, he's up in Indy. They could look at him. Teddy B from the Saints. But, the Saints, they're starting to put Teddy Bridgewater into some of those gadget plays where they put, him, Drew Brees, and Taysom Hill on the field at the same time. 3 quarterbacks. So, and on top of that, the Saints gave up a 3rd rounder to get Teddy B. So good luck with, all that. So, but you know what? Then too, Teddy B, his contract is up at the end of the year. So that might be a situation worth watching. Don't be surprised if Teddy Bridgewater does wind up in Jacksonville. And if so, Jacksonville will have a very, very good shot. Now, I said Colin Kaepernick's name earlier in the last segment. They could call that guy, but we know how that goes. They're not going to do that. So with all that being said, what exactly do the Jags do at the quarterback spot? Because they got problems. Now, it remains to be seen what they do, but as of right now, this squad is in deep trouble. Let's see what we got for I'm in and I'm out. Kobe Bryant went on SportsCenter last week and said he feels LeBron James is part of the Laker fam now. Take a listen.
How close are you to the newest member of the Laker family?
Well, he's part of the Laker family.
Right.
So when he first came on board, I said, listen, is there anything you need? You are now family now. You're part of this tradition. So if there's anything you need, just let me know.
Has he needed anything?
No, I think he's fine.
Yeah, LeBron is fine. He aight. Now, I'm in on this take. I'm 100% in on this take because is LeBron James part of the Laker family? Of course he is. Like, what kind of question is that? For the simple fact that he's under contract with the squad. He plays professional basketball in the NBA, and he wears a Laker uniform. Therefore, he plays for the Lakers. So therefore, he's part of their family. Now, as far as him being fully embraced in that family, no, not yet. And only because he needs a championship for that to happen. Now, listen, I love LeBron. I love LeBron. LeBron is my favorite NBA player ever. Yes, even more so than Michael Jordan. Now, don't get me wrong. Michael Jordan was great. He was great on the court. I get it. 6-0 in the finals, never went to a game 7, yada, yada, yada. I get all that. Michael Jordan was great. But I wasn't the biggest fan of Michael Jordan as a person. And, to be honest, I'm still not. So as far as that goes, I like LeBron as a player and as a person because, his social activism, just how the dude is, with his family and all that good stuff. Like, LeBron is my guy. But when you look at the Mount Rushmore of Lakers players throughout history, they've got rings. Magic, Kareem, Shaq, Kobe. Those guys have rings. They've got multiple rings. Now, there's a segment of Lakers fans who are die-hard, hardcore Kobe Bryant fans who almost view LeBron being on the Lakers as a blasphemy to the team, even to the NBA to some degree, because they feel like folks are looking at him as being better than Kobe. And to me, they could not be more wrong because that's just simply not true. The way I look at it, the best player in the world right now is on your squad. Why not enjoy it? Because, yes, I get it. Kobe was an all-time great. But come on, man. Let's not act like the Lakers were exactly contenders his last few years in the league. And that's not a knock on Kobe, but the Lakers were not very good his last few years in the league. Kobe was a lifelong Laker. LeBron isn't. I get all that. But all I'm saying is enjoy the ride, Lakers fans. Now, I've never been a Lakers fan, and I'm still not. But I follow them by default because my dude, 23, is on the team. Now, I'm not about to go buy Lakers gear. I'm not about to do all that. I'm not doing all that because I'm just supporting LeBron and I want to see him win a championship or 2 or 3. Now, when it comes to the NBA, I don't have a team in the NBA. I just enjoy watching the game. I like watching the game of basketball because it's a game of strategy. It's a game of finesse. It's a game of physicality. It's like a chess match going on the hardwood. It's a fun game to watch. But actual hardcore Lakers fans who are upset about LeBron being on the squad, I honestly don't get that. Now, when it comes to the NFL, I'm hardcore Broncos all day. It's Broncos for life. But Lakers fans who are mad about LeBron being on the squad, that's like me being mad about Peyton Manning coming to the Broncos because I felt like he was going to replace John Elway. It's simply not true. And if you really want to measure the greatness of LeBron James, take a look at the Cavaliers now. The Cavaliers have struggled so bad, they fired Ty Lue after 6 games. But not only that, you can get into a Cavaliers game now for under $20, concessions and all. Now, if I lived in Cleveland, I would be at a Cavs game almost every day of the week. Every day that there was a game, I would probably be there because less than $20 to go to an NBA game, bruh, sign me up. Believe that. I wish the Mavericks struggled that hard so I can get into a game for that cheap. But to me, LeBron James is going to do nothing but add to the Laker legacy. But he's got to win at least one championship to do so. And I honestly believe he'll get that. He's got 4 years to do it. But he's got to win at least one championship to add to this legacy, both to the Laker legacy and to his legacy. Now, if he wins 2 or more of those championships, oh, he's definitely in there. I mean, he's in there like swimwear. I don't care what anybody says. If he wins more than one championship, it's automatic. Now, if he doesn't win it all while he's in L.A., then you're going to see a whole truckload of anger towards number 23. And we'll get to debate whether or not it's warranted. But that's, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But right now, I 100% side with Kobe Bryant. LeBron James is part of the Laker fam. The Broncos traded Demaryius Thomas to the Houston Texans this past Tuesday in exchange for a 4th-round pick. Thomas played 8 full years for the Broncos and was a 4-time Pro Bowler, set a bunch of records, finished second to Rod Smith in a lot of wide receiver categories, and is a surefire Broncos Ring of Famer. To be honest with you, I'm out on this move. I don't like this move at all. I mean, I get it, and I completely understand it. And from a business side, as far as this contract and things like that go, part of me actually agrees with it. But just because I agree with it to a degree doesn't mean I have to like it. And I don't like it. And here's why. Demaryius Thomas is a really good dude. This is why I couldn't be in John Elway's position, because moves like these are tough. Demaryius Thomas is a really good dude. He's one of my all-time favorite Broncos. Demaryius Thomas is a lot tougher than he got a lot of credit for because he didn't miss a lot of games. He was extremely, extremely durable. He played through shoulder injuries, neck injuries, hip injuries, and never complained. That was one of the main things that his teammates loved about him was his work ethic and his toughness. He had a great work ethic. He produced. I mean, the dude he put up great numbers. Now, the last few years have been rough on him. He's had declining production, declining stats. I get all that. I get the drop passes. They were frustrating, but let's be honest. Every wide receiver drops passes at times. Now, like I said earlier, some people like to point to his declining stats, but have you seen Denver's quarterback production lately? Denver has not had a really good quarterback since number 18 retired in March of 2016. So as far as Demaryius Thomas's production, it's really kind of hard to gauge it because Denver just hadn't been that good at the position since Peyton Manning. Trevor Siemian, Brock Osweiler, and now Case Keenum, who is struggling. For the season, DT had 36 catches, 402 yards, 11.4 yards a catch. But when it comes down to his trade, his salary is what really did him in because he was scheduled to make $8.5 million this season. And that number jumps all the way to $14 million next season because of the way the Broncos structured his contract. He signed the big deal in 2015. Then he goes on, and I think they restructured it maybe a year or two ago. And so they backloaded a lot of the money on it. So to be honest, DT, this was his last season in Denver regardless, outside of a major restructure. But, I'm not even sure Denver would have been willing to restructure his contract for the simple reason that Courtland Sutton, who they drafted back in April, he's coming on faster than what the Broncos thought he would. I mean, and honestly, he's a younger, cheaper DT because he's built like DT. He's big, he's tall, he's strong. He's fast like DT was in his earlier days because DT's still pretty fast, but he's not as fast as he once was. He's 30 years old. He's lost, about a half a step. Now, Courtland Sutton, he's got great hands. He's got great hands like DT had in his early days. Courtland Sutton, he's got some sticky fingers. So, in all honesty, Courtland Sutton is DT's clone, basically. Some of those plays that I've seen him make earlier in the season he would go up and go after the ball, make these crazy acrobatic catches. I'm like, dude, this dude has got good body control like Demaryius Thomas has. I mean, it's scary how much he mimics Demaryius Thomas, both in his game and just the way he's built. Courtland Sutton has 17 catches for 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 19.1 yard per catch average, which is third in the NFL. Not bad for a rookie. Now, the crazy thing is, and the reason why I was like, when I first heard the rumors of the Broncos making the trade with the Texans, because the Texans play Denver in Denver on Sunday. So, DT has a little revenge on his mind. And honestly, who could blame him? Now it's been said that the Broncos, they've got some kind of like montage to honor him. And they've got, I think, like a banner and something for him. So that's going to be cool to see. And honestly, DT goes to a better quarterback situation in Houston because Deshaun Watson, he's better than Case Keenum. That's not hating. That's not knocking Case Keenum. That's just facts. Deshaun Watson is better than Case Keenum. So from that aspect, it's going to be a better situation for DT. Now, how that helps Houston. Defenses, they can't double team DeAndre Hopkins like they were able to. So in the passing game, that might open up some things for the Texans. Because honestly, man, I really think DT still has some really good football left in him. He's only 30 years old. He may not be the DT that he was, 3, 4, 5 years ago, but he still got some gas in the tank. So with all that being said, man, I wish the best for Demaryius Thomas. I really do, because I still got a lot of love for number 88. And, probably my favorite segment on this podcast. This is some bull jive. And this is some bull jive. I still have a hard time wrapping my mind around this story. Chad Kelly was released by the Broncos last Wednesday following his arrest last Tuesday night after he went into a couple's home uninvited. Now, he didn't know the couple. According to court records, he sat next to a woman and a baby on her couch and started mumbling incoherently. This happened around 1 a.m. after Kelly left a Western-themed party hosted by his teammate Von Miller. Well, ex-teammate now. Now, this right here was one of the dumbest things that Chad Kelly could have done. Because when I first heard this, I was like, wait a minute. How did he just walk up into somebody's house? And then the report came out that the homeowner thought he locked the door. Bruh, first of all, you got a woman and a kid in your home, who I'm presuming she's your wife, girlfriend, or whatever, and your kid in your home. You have got to make sure your doors are locked. Safety first. I mean, come on, man. Make sure your doors are locked, people. And I'm not saying that like to joke around. Like, seriously, make sure your doors are locked, especially this time of year. We got the holidays coming up. And, folks get idiotic around the holidays. So, yeah, make sure your doors are locked, people. Safety first. Incidents like this one are exactly why, even though people said Chad Kelly had first-round talent, they talked about his arm strength. They talked about how he can make all the throws and all that typical football jive that we hear draft experts talk about, the arm strength, the cannon arm, and good vision, and all this, yada, yada, yada. But this right here, this is exactly why this first-round talent guy dropped all the way to Mr. Irrelevant like he did. This man walked into somebody's house uninvited, sat down on the couch next to a woman and her baby, and started mumbling. Now, I live in Texas, and even though I'm one of the few, and when I say few, I do mean few, even though I'm one of the few Texans who doesn't believe guns solve everything, he's lucky that he doesn't play for Dallas or Houston, because if he did, there is a really, really good chance we're talking about Chad Kelly in the past tense, because there's a good chance that he could have gotten himself killed, because in Texas, we don't play that. In Texas, you walk up in our house uninvited, and we feel like you trying to harm us, we're going to defend ourselves. We're going to defend ourselves. We're going to defend our home, and we're going to defend our family. So he's in that aspect, he's extremely lucky and blessed, depending on how you look at it. He's extremely fortunate that that homeowner did not have a firearm, because this could have went left, and it could have got real bad real fast. Now, there's a report that he wasn't under the influence of alcohol, but to me, if he wasn't under the influence of alcohol, then what exactly was he under the influence of? Because no person in their right mind just walks into somebody's house with no invitation, sits on the couch, and starts mumbling. I mean, is he a zombie or something? On top of the fact, there's rumors that he was going to go undrafted, and John Elway drafted him as a favorite to his good friend Jim Kelly, who is Chad's uncle. Now, if that's true, you've squandered not only a great opportunity in Denver, but in the NFL, because there's a chance that his NFL career is over. Jim Kelly's one of the most respected people in the National Football League. Now, Chad Kelly had the incident in college where he threatened to shoot up someplace with an AK-47. He was kicked off Clemson's squad for arguing with coaches in 2014 during the spring game. So he already had a spotty reputation coming into the league, and now he goes and does this. And the thing is, Chad Kelly was actually showing a lot of promise on the field. I was actually pulling for this dude because he looked good in training camp. He looked good in the preseason. He looked so good in both training camp and preseason that he beat out first-round pick Paxton Lynch, and so good that Denver felt comfortable letting Paxton Lynch go. That's the only reason why Denver cut Paxton Lynch, because they felt like they could trust Chad Kelly on the field. Now, that might not be saying a whole lot depending on how you look at it and depending on what your opinion of Paxton Lynch and Chad Kelly is. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Now, Chad Kelly, he hadn't been in any trouble since he came into the league, and then it goes and ends like this. I was really pulling for this dude. But, you know, the crazy thing is, with all this, he'll still get another job in the NFL before Colin Kaepernick. But that's another story for another day. Chad Kelly, come on, man. This is some bull jive. Moving on to Tabletop Chronicles with Chef Rodaddy. Got a quick meal idea for you. I know a lot of you are like me. You don't have a lot of time. You got all kinds of things pulling you in all different directions in this crazy game called life. But this is a quick meal, and if you're short on time but you don't want to add in all the extra calories from fast food, I got you. It's called lemon pepper chicken, and it's so easy. You got to be a terrible cook to mess this up. Actually, you know what? This is so easy that if you can mess this up, I actually have respect for you that you can get that creative to even mess this up. I mean, it's it's easy, bruh. So this is all you need. You get some chicken breast or some chicken thighs. Personally, I prefer chicken thighs because they're a little more moist. Chicken breast is fine, but they're just a little dry. Anyway, preheat the oven to 350 degrees. 350. You cut as much fat off the chicken as possible. Cut as much fat off the chicken as possible off those pieces. Get you some egg wash. 1 or 2 eggs will do depending on how many pieces of chicken you're cooking. Now, if you're cooking a lot, of course, add more. Me personally, I like my food spicy. So I like to sprinkle black pepper and red pepper in the eggs and then mix it up. Then you get 1 cup of flour, actually more, depending on how many pieces of chicken you're cooking. But get 1 cup of flour. I personally prefer almond flour because it's a little more crispy and it's a little more tasty than white flour. And on top of that, it doesn't have as many carbs and starch from the calories and all that good stuff in it. You get 1 to 2 tablespoons of lemon pepper, or do it how your taste buds prefer. If you want more, put more. I love lemon pepper, so if I do 1 cup of almond flour, I tend to put 1.5 tablespoons in that cup of almond flour because it's so good. Anyway, mix the lemon pepper in the almond flour, dip the chicken in the egg wash, then you dip it in that almond flour lemon pepper mix. Then you spray an oven rack down with some Pam or some other kind of non-stick spray. Put the chicken on the rack and toss it in the oven until it's done in the middle, of course. Now, I like my chicken to get a little bit crispy, so, you know, generally for chicken thighs, you can leave them in there for about 30 minutes. But if you want them to get more crispy, leave them in there for a few extra minutes, and that's cool. Just don't dry them out. Now, what I like to do when I make these up, I cook them up and I cook a vegetable with it. I like green leafy vegetables, so I'll get something like spinach, purple cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, or collard greens. Now, for collard greens, I don't cook them up like we cook them at Thanksgiving, you know, with all the seasoning and salt pork and all that stuff in them. No. Collard greens are really good for you. They're actually one of the best things you can eat. It's how you cook greens. It's how you cook your food as a whole for the most part. That's going to determine whether or not it's good for you. Now, the way I'll do my greens, I put them in a pot, of course, after you wash them. Chop up part of an onion and put a jalapeno pepper in there, and that seasons them just right. Because a lot of time it's not what you're eating, it's how you prepare it. I mean, when you think about, especially when it comes to soul food and how us, black people, how we like to do our food, it's not so much things that we're eating is bad. Like, take for instance, chicken. Chicken is good for you, but if you fry it up, you kill all the nutritional value. If you get some sweet potatoes, they're good for you, but if you put all that caramel and all that marshmallows and all that stuff, you cancel out the nutritional value. Collard greens, they're really good for you. But if you put all that salt pork and salt and seasoning and all that other kind of stuff in it, you kill the nutritional value. So a lot of times it's how you prepare your food, how you cook your food, that's going to determine how healthy it is for you. And to be honest with you, man, we eating better coming out of 2018, going into 2019. So that's just, you know, a quick little recipe for you if you're on the run, but you still want to eat pretty healthy. You still want to eat according to your lifestyle. When it comes down to eating better, you want to try to get a serving of vegetables in with every meal. Like for me, I eat 4 meals a day, and I get a vegetable in with every last one of them. And then if I want something sweet, like I love grapes. Grapes and watermelon are my favorite fruit. Well, watermelon has quite a bit of sugar in it. So what I like to do is I just get like half a cup or like a cup of grapes, depending on how I'm feeling, and have, 2 servings of that a day, 1 in the morning. And if I want to, 1 in the evening at work, or I'll just eat 1 at night for dessert. And that's really how you do it. Like you can eat fruit. Fruit, when I look at fruit, my thing is when it comes to fruit, fruit is God's Skittles. You know what I'm saying? Fruit is God's candy. I mean, the human body, I'm not even going to get into all that. So yeah, 1 to 2 servings of fruit a day for me. And you really just kind of have to learn how you just have to learn your body. You have to learn what your body likes. You have to learn what your body can tolerate. And you really kind of just figure out what this machine, what this computer called your body, you figure out what makes it click. Different things click for different people. What clicks for me won't necessarily click for you. And that's okay. You just have to find out what works for you, what you like, what you don't like, and you just, abide accordingly. Take that. If you try the recipe, I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't, don't blame me. I'm just a messenger. Moving on to kicking it. Now, they're in the movie business. There was a big bomb that dropped this past week. Bad Boys for Life is actually happening. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, they teaming up again to make this happen. Like, I'm ready for this movie. I've been ready for this movie the last God knows how long they've been talking about making this movie happen. So finally, it's happening, Bad Boys for Life. But the bad thing is we don't get it until 2020. So, we got to wait. But, I know Will Smith. Well, I don't know Will Smith personally, but I know Will Smith, the actor. I know that he'll make it worth the wait, him and Martin both. So I'm looking forward to this big time. Me and Will Smith gonna create some stuff. I'm just putting it out there right now. Me and Will Smith gonna work together at some point. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know where, but I'm putting it out there. Me and Will Smith, we gonna create some stuff and we gonna make some stuff happen. And if Will Smith, in the unlikely event that he happens to hear this podcast, I'm coming for you, bro, because me and you, we gonna create some stuff. So anyway, man, I'm so excited about this movie. We got a lot of good movies coming out this fall season. I get to go see Halloween this weekend. I get to see Venom this weekend. I hadn't been able to see either one of those. We got Hunter Killer that's out. The Hate You Give is still out. You got Widows coming out later this month. You got Aquaman coming in December next month. So, I'm excited for this fall movie season. It's a lot of fire coming out, man. I'm excited for it. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Undrafted Podcast. I am so thankful to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, the talents, and the resources to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in. It really means a lot. Don't forget, you can follow the Undrafted Podcast on Instagram at the Undrafted Podcast or on Twitter at the Undrafted Pod. And I want to leave you with one Bible verse, Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.